Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's lecture on the second part of Dreaming in Cuban. Just a few things to highlight from the second part. One is the policing roles that both Lourdes and Celia have in service to their respective nations. And you really see here how for Lourdes, what it means for her to have this role of policing in her neighborhood, particularly the uniform she gets to wear and the power she gets to feel when she wears it. As seen in this quote, these shoes, it seems to her, are a kind of equalizer. She can run in them if she has to, jump curbs, traverse the buckled, vaulted sidewalks of Brooklyn without twisting an ankle. These shoes are power. If women wore shoes like these, she thinks, they wouldn't worry so much about more abstract equalities. They would join the Army Reserve or the auxiliary police like her and protect what was theirs. In Cuba, nobody was prepared for the communists, and look what happened. If only Lourdes had had a gun when she needed it. And so what you see here from her perspective is, how she sees herself and the power that she can potentially have in claiming, as she says, what's ours, protecting what's ours. And it's interesting that what she sees as her own is this area in Brooklyn that she is policing. We also see here the scene of the mural that Lourdes asks her daughter to create for her as part of the opening of her bakery and the celebration of the bicentennial. So the painting of the mural is an interesting point in a novel that seems to address a number of themes. Of course, the mother-daughter relationship, you see sort of Pilar being suspicious about Lourdes's intentions. You see the expression of belonging for both mother and daughter, where for the mother, she's seeing it as this patriotic expression of her commitment and her dedication to the United States. But for the daughter, as we see the kind of painting that she creates, especially of the Statue of Liberty, is sort of her depiction from her perspective of what belonging means to her in the United States. It also represents the limits to Lourdes's blind patriotism, as we see how she attacks the guy that tries to attack the painting in what is described, quote, a thrashing avalanche of patriotism and motherhood. So you see her here, even though she's on the one hand just as shocked as the other folks there about the painting, she's not going to allow someone else to attack her daughter or what her daughter has created. We also see in this part Ivanito and how his sexuality is alluded to in his relationship with the Russian teacher, and the innuendos that are made about his relationship with this teacher, which recall how Carmelo was also treated in Line of the Sun, when in that novel, there were innuendos and rumors and whispers about his relationship to the priest. And it made me think about why these authors represent gay sexuality through innuendo and suggestion. Is it a way to point to the homophobia in these communities where gay sexuality can only exist in whispers? We also see Felicia's sexuality and also in relationship to her ongoing madness in the second part of the novel, and particularly interested in the role sexuality plays in Felicia's life. Her sexuality seems to give her some solace from the realities of her life, a form of escape, but ultimately doesn't give her the peace and freedom she seems to be seeking, especially as we see her go from sudden relationship to sudden relationship and the violence that is involved in those relationships. We also see an interesting relationship here between mothers and sons. Sons for Lourdes and Celia seem to have a similar role that Felicia's sexuality has for her. They are representations of hope and freedom. As Celia says of her son when he returns, something tells Celia that if she can't save her son, she won't be able to save herself or Felicia or anyone she loves. We also see how Lourdes imagines the son she could have had, and how that might have changed her life, how her life might have been different. And of course, there are all sorts of depictions among these characters about national belonging, where each woman seeks to perform an idealistic notion of what it means to be patriotic to each of their nations and seek to belong through these performances, particularly between Celia and Lourdes. By depicting their somewhat exaggerated patriotism, the author seems to be critiquing any kind of blind, uncritical patriotism to both the US or to Cuba. And so if that's the case, then what does it mean for Pilar to say about returning to New York after her visit, her and her mother's visit to Cuba? I know now it's where I belong, not instead of here, but more than here. What exactly does she mean by that? And so this ends our, oh, no, I'm sorry. There's one more slide here. I'm not sure what is happening today with, there we go. Sorry about that. PowerPoint seems to be acting weird today. So the last slide for today's lecture is this one about other highlights, other things that I wanted to bring attention to. One is how Pilar's life begins to parallel the other women in her family. She buys Benny More records and goes to Botanica, like Felicia. She's sexually assaulted by the three boys in the park, reminiscent of Lourdes' assault by the Cuban soldiers. And in the end, inherits her grandmother's letters and is left in charge of remembering, like Celia does through those letters for so many years. We also see in the second part a chapter that is completely from Herminia's own perspective, which gives us a glimpse into the history of race in Cuba, particularly the history of Afro-Cubans there, but also about her relationship to Felicia and her family. And we also see at the end when Celia finally walks into the water and lets go of the drop pearl earrings. And so I'm curious about what you make, of course, of this ending. What exactly is she letting go of? Is the author insinuating that Celia is committing suicide? How are you interpreting what Celia means? Okay. So now we are done with the lecture for this week. I look forward to seeing your comments and your thoughts about the second part of Dreaming in Cuba. Have a great week.